To stay true to everyone's schedule, we will kick this off. We know we'll have more people that will show up here. But for those that don't know, my name is Mike Trimberger. I'm kind of the host here. And how did I become host? It really started with a conversation with Mike Snowberry and Phil from Bellin around some of the great things that they were doing around youth apprenticeship. And from that, we took some of that conversations and took it to our regional career pathway team in the New North and started talking about how do we start sharing the good news about all the things that are happening in this area. There's some really great opportunities, and we threw out this invite and put together a summit and have about 40 people that are registered for it. How many will show up? I'm not sure, but we are recording this session and we are going to use this. As the superintendent for the school district of Random Lake, I'm seeing every year we have students that want to get in healthcare but aren't finding those youth apprenticeship or those co-op opportunities in healthcare. And really, my hope for this session, I think everyone's here, is how can we share some best practices? How can we share some pains and some successes and help others see how we can really create a really great pipeline with that? So, along with that, we're going to hear the stories from both Bellin Health and SSM. After we have some time to kind of digest that, we will also hear from our YA coordinators in the area and what does it look like from the school side. As you have to have business, but you also have to have the schools and the students and the coordinators. So by the time we leave here today, I'm hoping that we're leaving with a really good idea of how this looks after multiple years of this. You have some resources on people that you can reach out to, and hopefully a vision on what this could look like from there. So from there, I am just the host. The moderator for this is Candace Boutel. She is the executive director for Inspire Wisconsin. And I'm going to kick it over to Candace as we get ready for the presentations and all that other good stuff. Candace?
Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased to be here. And as Mike said, my name is Candace. I'm with Inspire Wisconsin, and I'm really proud to work with several of the other organizations with the New North in the regional career pathway work that is happening across the state of Wisconsin. So, as Mike said, we're going to be talking specifically about healthcare pathways, and our organization promotes and works with businesses and schools to do all types of career exploration activities. And we really see youth apprenticeship as that capstone activity. So we are seeing huge growth in the New North in youth apprenticeship because of the work of many of the people in this room. So we are excited to see that continue to grow. So as we have again a few more friends entering the room, what we would love for you to do, so we don't take 30 minutes with introductions, please just put in the chat who you are and what organization you're with, and that way we kind of have a sense of who's here and who we're talking with. And while we're doing that, I can introduce our first organization, and that is going to be Bellin. I'm pleased to introduce Phil Scheibel, who is a certified physical therapist with Bellin. And Phil, you can take it away and introduce your team and share with us some more about your story.
Nice, thank you. Candace, will you just confirm you can see the PowerPoint?
We can, and if you'd like, you could hit present and then it'll go full screen.
Yeah. Better?
Excellent.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So thank you, Candace. Appreciate it. Mike, thank you for pulling this together. Appreciate that. And my partners are online here: Chad Dahl from Bellin College and Katie Bartell from Bellin House Human Resources Department. We kept this pretty high level, but hopefully it'll give you a good sense of what's worked for us. We started this during COVID, probably for two reasons. Number one, free time, which means just we weren't busy and we had the energy to get after something that we'd thought about for a long time. But number two, acute shortages in workforce. It's later in the slide here, but the reality is 10%. And that number hasn't changed, which means that we don't have 10% of our workforce. And everything that we've done, and we've been super creative, hasn't actually closed that gap very much at all. So on Monday morning, 10% of our employees don't show up, and that's a problem, long term wise. Um, so we went and we visited Mike out at Luxembourg Casco, who several years earlier had started with diesel and auto mechanics, and we're just really impressed with what Mike had accomplished out there in a very short period of time. We are a very strong sports medicine program. That's our anchor. So we have long-standing relationships with a lot of school districts in the community. So this was really, it's a natural evolution, I think, for us. Um, we believe that there's 4 wins. Number one, focus on the kid. If we can expose young people to a variety of different careers, in our case, we're talking about healthcare. If we can expose them to healthcare early on, then they can make decisions that will translate into efficiency for their education and efficiency for their life. Probably the hardest thing for me that Mike had to coach me up on was when kids would drop out or kids didn't do well, and Mike's message was, Phil, quit treating that like failure. It's not failure at all. We did an excellent job with that kid. That young person decided that healthcare isn't for them. That's a win. That's 100% a win all the time, Phil. It's not a problem. So I do think, just in terms of the way you approach it, you have to go into it with that mindset, because otherwise it's just not constructive. Number two, we're partnering with school districts, and it's their job to serve the community that they're here for. And if we can develop programming that allows them to better serve our communities, that's a win for the school district. Number three, obviously the health system wins. We win by hopefully more people choosing to go into healthcare careers and eventually becoming employees of our organization down the road. But we also win just in terms of, this is a bolus of young people coming into entry level positions that are filling needs. Please hear this very clearly. We've never made up an FTE. So we didn't create jobs for this YA Healthcare Academy program. We have simply used positions that are already posted out there where they're entry level, that the high school students could fill the need. And number four, our partner is Bellin College, which is separate from Bellin Health. And Bellin College wins by filling its classrooms over time with people that choose to go into physical therapy or nursing, surgical first assist, or the radiology sciences programs that are offered there. So the components of the program, this is for high school students. And our job is to create, first of all, didactic opportunities. So college level classes that they can take while at their high school. They can take them usually asynchronously, some are synchronous. Anatomy and physiology, we got to get you in the building. So we do that one on site. Everything else is asynchronous or synchronous that they can take during a study hall or in their free time. They second of all is just trying to get kids meaningful exposure. So we do a variety of things. So number one, we do a seminar twice a year. We're doing one coming up where we're going to have a mental health expert talk to the kids. We usually get, 30, 35 kids. What's been surprising is how many parents come, though. And it's an opportunity for us to have a nurse or a physician or a surgical first assist or a physical therapist, or in this case, a mental health provider, talk to the kids about the specifics of their career choice, and hopefully allow them to determine if that makes sense for them or not. We do career specific days, which means a camp for nursing, or a couple hour day devoted to physical therapy or sports medicine, where we bring kids in who are starting to think, I think this makes sense for me, and we can immerse them in that profession for a few hours, and hopefully that turns into more clarity for them. Like I said, during the summer, Bellin College offers a number of different camps for nursing and the radiological sciences. And then as part of the very first class, which is an introduction to healthcare course that Chad Dahl teaches, we have shadowing opportunities at Bellin Hospital for those students. We also have a website where it allows students to submit a request either for shadowing, and then we connect them with somebody and get them in. This should not be hard. It's not hard. If it's hard for your health system, they're the problem. Um, but on the flip side, students can also request a mentor. We don't get a ton of requests for that, but we have a mentoring platform where if a young person is kind of settled in and is thinking, man, I think this is right for me, then we sit down with them one on one and we talk about what they need to do in high school, during the summers, in undergraduate, to prepare themselves for admission into one of those programs specifically. And then we also do hands-on healthcare. We it's either a field trip to Bellin College where students go through 6 different healthcare setting exposures, or Chad will also load up a mobile unit. It's a bit of a scaled down version, but it's really good for middle schools. And Chad will take that remotely out to the school and do 4 stations with the young people. And then, as Mike and Candace said, youth apprenticeship is the capstone, right? So, kids who are moving out of their junior year that summer or into the next school year as a senior, looking for opportunities to work in youth apprenticeship. Um, I have a slide later on that shows you it's not just all CNA. It's not just if you're interested in nursing. There's actually a pretty broad diversity. Our challenge, and we're really striving to meet it, is that there are clearly young people in other industries that are interested in a healthcare setting. So I'm interested in marketing, but in healthcare, or I'm interested in the business of healthcare. And for us, trying to create those opportunities and fill needs that we have. Um, Next slide. So just real quickly, in 2025, we have 15 schools that are participating. You know, we added 9 of those. So we really started with 3 the first year. We bumped that up the second year, and then we added 9 this year. So we have 15 school partners. If you're interested, we're interested. Let's talk. Over 200 students are enrolled taking classes now. Our retention rate is really high. Probably going to double that number in the next year or two. And we are probably starting to reach a capacity point for how many students that we can place in youth apprenticeship, because we've placed over 90. So absent, like we simply won't be able to meet the demand for kids interested in healthcare. So we do need other health systems to embrace the strategy of youth apprenticeship and use those young people for the positions that they already have. So these just a little bit on the numbers. Really, we just wanted to show you it's not all nursing. You know, so on the right hand side, you know, clinical assistants, sterile processing, which are the folks who clean the instruments that surgeons use in the OR. EVS is environmental services. You can see food and nutrition are you know, we placed a bunch of kids. We just added HR assistant, and that person's crunching all the numbers for the healthcare academy. We have a pool up in Ocano where we have lifeguards. You can see CNAs is by far the number one at 110. PAR is our front desk people, so people that answer phones or greet you when you walk in the building, and then a variety of other little things. I think, you know, like I said before, we're constantly pressured to try to grow this. It's later in the slides, but bottom line is at least from the healthcare provider side, you have to have a really solid HR person. You cannot do this, and I think I can guarantee you that you will fail if HR isn't hands on working with you. On our core team, Katie is a key member of the team, and she does more work along with Chad than any of the rest of us. If you don't have HR involved, you know you're going to end up reaching out to a bunch of people who don't know what you're talking about, and it's not super helpful. A lot of these opportunities have evolved because Katie talks to the manager of the department and says, hey, would you consider youth apprenticeship for this position? And they say, no, I wouldn't. And then Katie has to explain it because they don't actually know what it is, and help them see that actually a young high school student who's motivated, that the YA counselor has already vetted out. And that's super important. Mike had to really drill that into our heads. One of the huge advantages we see in youth apprenticeship is that the YA counselor and the school counselor, they vetted out kids and they've determined this is the right kid who's ready at this point in their life to take this on. And then you can see on the left hand side, our retention rate is up to 87%. We're placing 50, 60 or more kids a year in youth apprenticeship. And then operationally, Katie meets with David from CISA every week. So they have a standing meeting every week, and Katie shares with David opportunities that are available. And then David takes that and gets to work with all the YA counselors at CISA 7, and he comes back with kids who might be a good fit. So our partnership, this is a young lady that worked with us in a front desk opportunity, but for the student, it's personal and professional development. It's rooted in the community work that we do at Bellin Health. We're a not-for-profit community resource. It's developing a sense of belonging and being part of a team. And then we support it with job shadows, networking, recruiting events like the one that's in this photo, and then in some cases, educational assistance. And for the health system, we get hopefully people that we've already vetted out through youth apprenticeship who want to come back to us when they're done with undergraduate or graduate training, or if they just want to continue in the position they were in high school. This is a picture of hands-on healthcare that I mentioned before. So Chad runs this at Bellin College. This is a mock with a mannequin of kids practicing what it would be like to work in a surgical field. So they get to, put on all the stuff and see how comfortable that is, et cetera. This is just, I'll leave this up for a second. One of the young gals who worked as a CNA for us when we very first started in 2022. I would say the vast majority of our kids have had just, a really, really, really good experience. And then our core team first is representative of the health system, Bellin College, and then community school districts. So Mike, we invited Mike to join our team as we developed this right from the very beginning. And that was imperative to our success, really from one core principle, which is we know healthcare, we don't know a darn thing about schools and education and families and students in that environment. So having those school district voices that are able to challenge us and push us and make us uncomfortable, and at the same time help us make good decisions is vital. Mickey Volk from Howard Swamico joined us this year, and we just really value Mike and Mickey's contributions. On the HR side, like I said before, if you're a healthcare provider, I just think you cannot do this if the human resources department isn't completely committed. Katie and JP Parmentier from Bellin Health is on the organizational development side of the organization, and he just makes sure that we're thinking broadly about health system needs. Operationally, from a leadership perspective, Marsh Hughes is responsible for our sports medicine relationships. And it's a natural connection because Mark is constantly meeting with superintendents and principals and athletic directors. So it's a natural evolution for him to be talking about the opportunities in Healthcare Academy as well. And then I'm just a resource that can hopefully get things processed and moved along within the health system. Number 4, on the didactic side, Chad Dawes is the leader. He does the vast majority of the work academically, which means he's going on site to schools. He's running all the online programming. Bellin College has been an immense asset for us because it is small, it is nimble, and they can get things done quickly, which is often not the case, right? So we started working on this by visiting Mike at Luxembourg in February, I believe, and we were up and operational in August with the first cohort with 3 different school districts. So really, really, really short timeline. And then our partner is obviously CISA 7 and the Youth Apprenticeship counselors that um, are there. And, it's just been super helpful. Operationally, we meet every other week for an hour. And we just talk through the issues or the challenges that we're working on. But like I said, on the operational part of it, Katie meets with David every week, and they're actually talking about the individual positions at the health system, and then David works with his folks and determines whether they have potential candidates, and then we treat them like we would any other applicant. There is no special process for youth apprenticeship. They're applying for a position, they're interviewed, and either accepted or not. So I know that was fast. What questions do you have?
Yeah, that was very informative. I appreciate you sharing that. I'd love for anyone to, you can either enter it in the chat or feel free to unmute and ask questions. Now is the time to learn about some of the nuts and bolts if this is something you're really interested in, investigating.
Phil, I'm gonna break the ice here with the first question. It's a question I asked when I first met you. What I've always heard through some of the barriers that we've had with placing students is about HIPAA. Could you explain a little bit how you navigate some of those HIPAA restrictions that we've been hearing about?
Yeah, yeah, I think they're making that up, and I know that's not the answer, but um, these are not students coming in and shadowing or observing, right? These are employees. So there is no HIPAA. I mean, HIPAA applies to all of us, right? But there's nothing unique or special about youth apprenticeship at Bellin Health because we're interviewing them, we're hiring them for a position. They go through the same employment practices that any other employee. That might apply if it was a non-paid position where they weren't going through orientation and training and all the things that go with being a new employee. But that's not how we're doing it. These are young people who are being hired to do a job. So I mean the same HIPAA guidelines that apply to all of us exist, but there's nothing special we need to worry about.
Can I just add a little bit about that as well? Like with the shadowing opportunities, even though they're not a Bellin employee, when we offer those shadowing opportunities, we also make the students go through the Greater Green Bay Healthcare Alliance modules that are required by our healthcare employees. So they have to complete that first before they get into that shadowing opportunity. So by submitting that application or that request form, it's not like they can just jump right into a shadow. There are barriers or hoops that they have to jump through to get that opportunity open to them, like vaccinations and HIPAA compliance and things like that. So we do use resources that are in the community that are present to help ensure that HIPAA is maintained for all those students that have those opportunities.
Thanks, Chad. And we do have a question in the chat. Has anyone utilized youth apprenticeship in the clinic setting versus hospital?
Yeah, for sure. That was, and Katie can comment more, but initially, Bellin Medical Group has 31 clinics in Northeast Wisconsin and the UP, and initially, the response was, "Yeah, we're not doing that," right? In large part, because they're teenagers, and I think Katie will tell you that that's largely perception based, right? And I think it's just really important that we emphasize to folks the counselors at the school and the counselors at YA have already worked with this kid, and they're not sending us some knucklehead who just said, "Hey, I wanna," right? They've done work with this young person to prepare them, and I think we've only had one kid that really, not a good choice, right? But and one out of 100, like I don't do that well hiring in the orthopedic service line. I'm swinging and missing more frequently than that. So they are more than capable. But but um, specifically, the clinic had to reorganize its work a little bit just because a CNA by licensure, by certificate, can't do everything that an MA can do. Well, guess what? Nobody's getting an MA certificate. Nobody's going into it. Everybody needs a ton of them. And I think eventually the medical group just said, okay, these kids are out there. We can use them for 90% of the job. We can reorganize or restructure the work a little bit. One of the big things was medication reconciliation. You got to get it right. And they figured out a way to reorganize the work, but we are now using them in outpatient clinics. We have been for over a year, and honestly, they've done really well, really well.
It's more, I guess that was my question. I manage the Aurora clinics in Manitowoc County, and we
Yeah.
are adding 3 youth apprentices to our team this year, and we're looking at, bringing them in for the business side of things, like our patient, reception positions,
Nice.
as well as clinical. And I can see the CNA track it's very well published. Well, I can't bring someone in to my clinics to do a MA role that has CNA training. They're not the same. And so I guess I was looking into how it is. Is it a matter of us just having the right job description that fits this so that we can utilize the clinical portion? I don't want to bring someone into a clinical role who can't do any of the clinical work because
Yeah.
maybe we don't have the right job
How much?
description set up or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, and that's the dialogue. Like, how much can't they do? Because in
Right.
reality, they can do the vast majority of it. Um, but two, I know Katie will have more, and I'll shut up. But um, Chad and Mark Bake at Bellin College have put together a pilot where we're going to start a patient care technician role at Bellin College this summer. And if that goes well, we're really, really upbeat about that. Chad will tell you he has a lot of students who are like, I don't want to be a nurse, so I'm not going to get my CNA. And we can tell them all day long, it doesn't matter if you want to go to medical school, nursing school, physical therapy, athletic training. They all like to see that you got patient care experience. There's no better way as a high school kid than a CNA. They don't care. So the patient care technician gets rid of that word nursing, even though it's largely, much of it is the exact same. But the advantage with the patient care technician is we can build the curriculum to meet the needs of the clinic, right?
Mhm.
So and I can connect you with Jill Specker, who's the manager of Bellin Medical Group that Katie and I have been working with. But they're able to tell us, and they're giving us skill set curriculum. This is what we need you to teach them. And an example is phlebotomy. If they can't do phlebotomy, they're of no value to us in an outpatient clinic where it might be 5 staff working in a rural clinic on a day, right? One doctor, one nurse, and they have to be able to multitask. And the response at Bellin College is, yeah, okay, we'll teach them, right? So I'm really, really hopeful that pilot goes well this summer, and that we're able to expand it this coming fall. Katie, I don't know, on the Bellin Medical Group side, can you maybe just give them feedback on what the challenges were? And
I mean, I think organizationally ourselves, just like so many other organizations, that MALPN role is just, that and Surge Tech are the 3 that we're working so hard to fill and find the right candidates and make sure we have the right employees that we're bringing into the organization so we have longevity. So finding ways to look at staffing and to be creative, not creative in a sense that we're just doing things we shouldn't be doing, but being creative in terms of how we support these youth apprentice students coming into these roles and still provide that patient care is just something of a necessity really as we move forward. Jill really could speak, I think, far more eloquently about how they're using them, and certainly we can make that connection for folks. But like you, Jen, we are seeing individuals that are coming into our clinics that are exploring, opportunities through that PAR lens, or that they're seeing how the clinic operates as a PAR. And that's been really helpful in terms of long-term interest in what they want to do as they move into their healthcare career.
This is excellent discussion. We've got a couple more questions here in the chat yet. And this one's regarding the hands-on health days. How do you create buy-in or get interest from various departments within your organization to be able to offer these experiences to students?
Yeah, so primarily for the hands-on healthcare days, since we are a healthcare teaching institution, we have a lot of like resources here, like faculty members, students, volunteers that help me get these opportunities to these high school students. So a majority of the stations are run by Bellin College faculty and Bellin College students primarily, but we also rely on some of the healthcare system professionals as well, like physical therapy, where they will come in from the healthcare system side to help with our high school students. For the mobile events, again, it's primarily faculty and students as well, but we also utilize, again, Bellin Health's PT and AT faculty or AT professionals that are at the high schools that we go to, but also can travel to those high schools if they're within a range of those high schools that they are normally at. So it does take some buy-in because they do have to take away from their patient care days. They'll have to schedule it in. So it does take some time to get the schedules out ahead of time in advance. So those departments have time to plan their scheduling for those days when we have those hands-on healthcare events. But even for the career kind of like lecture series or the events that we host on Bellin College, getting buy-in, you'll be surprised like how many people at your organization are willing to come out and speak with high school students that are interested in sharing their experiences. So it's just like talking to people within your organization, getting the word out there that these are opportunities, and you'll have people just speak up like, yes, I want to do this. My son goes to Bayport High School and they are talking about this. So I am more than happy to kind of get into Bellin College and talk in front of high school students. So I think it's a lot of just getting the word out there. And then once the word's out there, you'll find volunteers kind of filling those opportunities.
And I do think you got to be willing to have really direct conversations with people. Oh, no, that wouldn't work for us. Oh, okay. So you're fully staffed in your department? You have no hiring issues? Well, clearly the answer is usually no. And then, direct questions. What's your short-term and your long-term strategy to staff your department? And if the answer is, well, we filled out the form and they posted it online, that's not actually a strategy, right? So you can be part of the long-term solution and work with us, or you can just sit there and wait for applicants to come. Waiting for applicants to come is a strategy that doesn't work, right? It's simply not going to work for you over the long term. It's not enough.
From a recruitment perspective to organizationally, our talent acquisition team, we meet every week, and every week youth apprentice opportunities are discussed in every one of our weekly meetings, which keeps it top of mind for all of our recruiters. It also keeps it top of mind for them when they're working with their leaders and looking at roles where maybe we have a 0.2 or a 0.3 available in a role that would be certainly something that a youth apprentice student could do as an entry-level role. And so we're just always exploring those opportunities, which has paid dividends. We've really expanded into our peri-op area. Surgery has brought on sterile processing techs. So we're definitely seeing leaders that are willing to give it a shot. And we're demonstrating, obviously, throughout the organization that it does work. And I personally was thrilled when we hired our HR assistant this year, because I've been asking for 2 years and finally we're doing it too. So it just is to continue to have the conversation, I think, is super important.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, and it's important to keep an eye on those new pathways that are coming out, because that can definitely have an impact on this as well. I do want to pivot now to our next group, and I so appreciate the information. And for our Bellin friends, there's a couple questions in the chat that maybe you'll be able to answer right there by typing in some answers. We also will have some time together towards the end to have additional conversation. So we are going to move on to our next group, and I'm going to introduce Sandra Riley. She is the Talent and HR Operations Leader at SSM Health. And Sandra, go ahead and take it from here.
Thank you. We'll see if we can get our screen share to work today. Let me know when it's working.
It's working.
All right. Well, hallelujah. I saw some questions in the chat that hopefully I'll address as I go through the slide deck here today. But of course, I know we'll leave some time at the end. So such a pleasure to be with all of you here today. SSM Health is expanding its participation in youth apprenticeship in a big way. We're really excited about this program, and I'm excited to share with you today. So before we start talking about the model that we use at SSM Health, I want to provide a little context for you, because I think that scale is important for our organization. So I just wanted to share a little bit of background for you as a starting place. Many of you may know this already, but SSM Health operates in 4 states, Wisconsin, Illinois, Oklahoma, and Missouri. We have 23 hospitals, more than 330 clinics, and 13 post-acute care locations, plus home health and hospice. So I know we're talking about Wisconsin specifically today, but as my team works on Youth Apprentice, we are looking at this from a system level lens. And I think that's really important because I want the other healthcare providers on the call to understand that it is possible and very feasible to scale a YA program without a huge investment in staff resources. I think that's an important message I want to make sure everyone hears today.
Sandy, we don't see your presentation now. If you want to bring it back up, I apologize.
Oh, that's weird. It left me.
All right. Yes, thank you.
All right. Maybe when I clicked hide, it didn't like it. All right. So we're the 6th largest Catholic healthcare system in the United States. We are nonprofit, which also plays into our model and how we approach youth apprenticeship. We have about 40,000 employees plus an additional almost 13,000 providers. So as I mentioned, scaling or the ability to scale is really important for us at SSM Health. My team is small but mighty. I have 2 team members, Jenny Kranz and Wendy Beach, and they serve as career coaches. So in late 2024, SSM went through a major restructuring in its talent space, and we separated workforce development from talent acquisition. And so that's a little bit different model than maybe what others are using. So my team's scope as it relates to youth apprenticeship is really around design and build, and then providing support to our leaders who are involved in apprenticeships. But my team is not in the recruitment space. So that's partly what's made this possible for us to really scale to larger size as an organization where it comes to apprenticeship programs. So my team handles all pipeline programs, apprenticeship programs being one of those. And we also handle programming for upskilling current employees, as well as career coaching, building career pathways, and handling workforce development grants. And I saw Becky's on the call. Hi, Becky. So our model at SSM Health, rather than being a centralized model, is more of a distributive model. And where youth apprenticeship is concerned, we have 3 primary partners in this endeavor. First, the person on my team, who is the coach, and they serve as a point of contact for our CISA partners and our high school coordinators. They do all the design and build if we're rolling out a new pathway, for example, or if we're expanding into a new market within SSM Health. And then they support our champions. And who are our champions? Our champions are senior leaders, typically directors, vice presidents, who really advocate for youth apprenticeship, promote youth apprenticeship at the organization. They help us identify specific mentors at their specific clinic or hospital locations, and they're the ones that are committing the financial resources to support the apprenticeship. And then, of course, we have our mentors, and they are the lifeblood of our program. And of course, they are the ones who are doing the training of our apprentices, assuring that we're in compliance with all of our child labor laws, and they're doing all of the tracking and reporting to our consortium partners. So that's just high level what our model looks like. I know it's a busy screen, but I wanted to just share for other healthcare providers a quick look at what our design build workflow looks like. Bellin mentioned this too, and ours is somewhat similar here. So as we approach youth apprenticeship, the first step in that journey is to gain organizational support. And Phil mentioned human resources. Human resources is a key partner for us as well. So we look at getting support from our presidents, our hospital presidents, and our clinic vice presidents. And they really serve as executive sponsors for us. And then we bring in human resources and talent acquisition early on in the conversation to assure that we have widespread understanding and support of the overall model, but also the specific pathways and the locations that we're looking at rolling out to. So that's really that first introductory step. Once we have that organizational support and an executive sponsor, then my team goes out and recruits champions and gains their commitment, both the financial commitment, but also the commitment to carving out some time for their leaders to serve as mentors. This is a time commitment, no question about it. There's a fair amount of training for apprentices, especially in the first few months as they're just getting acclimated to SSM Health and they're learning and growing and making advancements on their competencies. So that's a really important step for us too. And then part of what my team is doing is we're looking at working with our champions and our executive sponsors to identify where do we have the most need as an organization at that particular location. So we're looking at things like turnover, vacancy rates, what does our candidate pipeline look like? All of those sorts of metrics to help drive decision making where it comes to which pathways we want to roll out at which locations. And then we're looking at capacity. So how many youth apprentices can a specific hospital or unit take on at any given time? That's a really key question that gets answered early on. And then we work very closely with our mentors. We help train the mentors as well. And then we build all the infrastructure on my team. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like in a moment. So that's high level, that design build piece. And then we rely on our talent acquisition team for the actual hiring steps. So, and we follow the same hiring process with an apprentice as we do for any other employee. We treat them exactly like any other professional. A job requisition is created. The recruitment team vets the apprentice candidate. And they interview with a mentor or hiring leader. Usually it's the same person, but not always. The difference with an apprentice is we do have them go through a job shadow as part of the interview process, because we want to make sure that they get their eyeballs on what the work really looks like before they commit to it. That's so important because outside of being a nurse, a lot of folks don't understand what these jobs really are. And you can talk about it, sure, but seeing it is a whole nother matter. So that's been, I think, one of the keys to our success at SSM Health with Youth Apprenticeship is incorporating that job shadow as part of our hire process. And then again, our recruitment team does the offer just like they do for any other role. So these are paid positions. They're treated exactly like any other employee. They are an employee of SSM Health, just like anyone else. And then of course they start. So that is our hire workflow. Now I know this is a lot of text and I'm not going to read this to everybody, but I just wanted to give just some examples of some of the things that my team works on as we're doing that design build process. Because there are a lot of little things that need to happen up front before the rollout of the program or even the rollout of a new pathway. And I'm going to talk about one example. One of the ways that we've been able to scale this program with only 2 staff on my team is that we have created a window of opportunity for youth apprenticeship. So we don't hire youth apprentices all year long. We narrowed that down to the spring only. So we only hire youth apprentices. Generally, it's February through May. That allows us to plan out our workloads and our time so that we can make that work. And then we really try and get all of our youth apprentices to start during the summer. That's really important because as a new employee at SSM Health, just like other employees, there are a series of first steps that they need to take before they even really get into the role. So they go to orientation, they go to new employee welcome. If they're in a clinical or patient-facing role, they also attend a clinical orientation. And these all occur during the day, during the week. So they couldn't do that if they were in school. So again, we've narrowed down the available start dates for youth apprentices to a time when they're not in school. Otherwise, we end up with all sorts of wonky things happening. They also go through some safety training. They go through HIPAA training, lots of training up front during that first week that really relates to a lot of compliance sort of topics. But HIPAA is really important, and we reinforce those messages frequently, not only during their initial training, but ongoing. I think that's a new concept for a lot of youth. They're not familiar with HIPAA or why it's important. They think, oh, I'll just look up my family member's record and that's okay. So that's really an important topic for us. So that's how we've been able to scale, is by just creating a model that limits when we hire and how we hire youth apprentices. So just to share a little bit about the career pathways that SSM Health has rolled out. In the first column are our apprentice roles, and you can see that in the healthcare space, we've got quite a few roles that we have rolled out: nurse aide, phlebotomy, lab, PT, MA, MOA, imaging, pharmacy. Yeah. This year, we're expanding to include optical apprentices because we do have a series of vision clinics in Wisconsin. And in one of our markets, we're also going to bring in trade occupations, and we're really excited about that, to bring in HVAC, electrical, and plumbing, and really get some of these apprentices on the road to becoming journeyman professionals at some point. The second column is the pathway that they would transition to if they successfully complete their apprenticeship and come on board with SSM Health. So we've done some work up front to identify what those pathways look like. What are the options for an apprentice? It doesn't mean that's the only option, but that's sort of the logical connection to the apprentice role that they're in. And then the third column is where we would like to get them to once they complete some additional, typically post-secondary education. And of course, we have all sorts of supports in-house to get them there, from tuition assistance to tuition reimbursement programs, and in-house training. So there's lots of options for them to get additional training as they transition. So just a few things, just things that we've learned along the way that and some best practices that we would recommend for healthcare providers that are interested in launching a youth apprenticeship program. One of the things in Wisconsin I wish we had done is I wish we had started with a small pilot. We didn't do that. We just went all in Wisconsin from the beginning, and we hired 60 apprentices our first year across 9 pathways. It was probably a little ambitious of me, but you know what? It worked. We've had a fun time with it. It's been phenomenally successful. But as we look to expand in our other markets, we will not repeat that. We will start with pilot programs on a smaller scale, get a foundation under our feet, and then expand from there. We did this, and I'm really glad we did. We planned for long-term strategy and scalability right from the start. So because we operate in multiple states, we're dealing with different state regulations in every single state. Every state operates their youth apprenticeship program differently. So as we've approached this, we try to create a consistent methodology, consistent approaches, consistent workflows, everything across the board, just trying to be consistent from one state to the next. I will say Wisconsin tends to have the highest bar, which is lovely. And so Wisconsin has really served as the barometer for us for our other 3 states. So we always take the state with the highest standard in whatever we're looking at, and we use that as our starting point across all of our states. And that's worked really well for us so far. Simplify. I can't go without saying that. Every opportunity you have to simplify your workflows or processes, I think will make your lives so much easier. And that's where that system level lens that we're using comes into play. If we had tried to create separate systems or workflows in every state, it would have been too difficult for such a small team to manage. But by having a universal approach, it's made that very feasible. One of the things we did, I think, really well in Wisconsin that has served us in the long term is we set very clear expectations and goals with our champions and our mentors. In fact, we wrote a job description for them, so to speak, an informal one, and shared it in writing. And we did a lot of training with champions and mentors at the onset. That really helped us avoid problems down the road, confusion, mixed messages, that sort of thing. And it really helped us gain buy-in. I will say our leaders in Wisconsin have been incredibly enthusiastic about youth apprenticeship. One of the things that has really surprised them is how exciting just the experience of having an apprentice at their site is. I get feedback from leaders all the time about how much energy these apprentices just infuse into their workplace, and they bring a fresh perspective, fresh ideas, and they really weren't expecting all that energy and enthusiasm. It's had a trickle effect across the whole team where our apprentices work. So that's been a delightful surprise to our leaders, and it's really helped them advocate for the program, spread the word, and get other leaders willing to come on board with us. So that's been phenomenal. One of the things we did not do when we first started this journey, and I wish we had, we're going back and we're doing it now, is to set a progressive wage schedule for apprentices. At SSM Health, we really do want to expand into the adult registered apprenticeship space, and that has that wage progression requirement. So now we're going back and we're redesigning our compensation structure to include that progressive wage schedule. We're just going to roll it out to all apprentices. We're not going to separate youth apprentices from adult apprentices. It's just going to be, again, consistent, simple, the same across all of our hospitals and all of our states. Defining those career pathways up front has been really helpful for us, understanding not only the role that the apprentice will play, but what the pathways are for the apprentice down the road, should they decide they want to stay with SSM, whether that's in a part-time capacity, PRN, full-time, whatever that looks like. Having those pathways defined up front has really led to some success for us, really been important. The other thing that we did is we created an online community for mentors to be able to share information, share best practices, and ask questions, and really be a resource for each other. That has changed the game for us. Again, with just a team of 2, it would have been very difficult for us to be the only folks that they could go to for questions. So having each other as a support structure has really helped us to scale this program. The other thing that we've done on my team is, as we do get questions or receive questions from mentors, is we just have an ongoing FAQ document. We just keep adding to it, and we make sure that that's shared and visible online. That too has helped a lot of our mentors and serves as a resource guide for them. That's been incredibly helpful. One of the things we didn't do up front, and I wish we had, is we did not build in recognition opportunities for our apprentices and our mentors. One of the reasons this is a challenge for us is our geography. Because our apprentices are spread out over such a large geographic area. So even just in Wisconsin, from Janesville and all the way up to Fond du Lac, and just spread out over dozens and dozens of clinics, many of which are in very small rural markets. Our apprentices aren't all in the same place at the same time, literally ever. So even getting a group photograph of our apprentices would be a challenge for us. I wish we had spent a little more time thinking about that up front and how we were going to overcome some of those barriers. So that's something we're still working on. And then trying to find more formal opportunities to recognize our mentors, because they do invest a lot of time and their hearts into training our apprentices, and we want to make sure that we're publicly recognizing their efforts and saying thank you for all that they do. Future. So this in 2024, our first year of statewide expansion, as I meant, we hired 60 apprentices in Wisconsin. In 2025, we anticipate we will hire 70 with the rollout of the optical pathway. And we're also going to, I think, see some more hires in the lab pathway. So we're excited about that. And then we are also adding adult registered apprenticeships in Wisconsin, just 2 this year, which will be surge techs and ophthalmic assistants. And so one of the beauties of youth apprenticeship is youth apprentices will serve as a pipeline for our adult apprenticeship programs. So that is ideal state for us. But we're also looking at other states, of course, and so we are rolling out a pilot in both Oklahoma and Missouri this year. So my team is busy setting up doing all the design build in those 2 states. And then in 2026, you can see the numbers continue to rise here. 75 in Wisconsin. I anticipate my goal is 45 in those other 3 states. So we're holding off on Illinois. Illinois has its own state regulations that are a little more challenging for us as an org. So we're postponing Illinois for a little bit. But you can see that this is continuing to scale over the years. So I cannot wait until we get to 200 apprentices, 300 apprentices. We're really excited about it. So I think that's all on this one. So pathways, I mentioned earlier the pathways that we currently have in place. I would love to see us expand into more of the business pathways. I think that's going to be a little challenging for us, only because some of our business functions are controlled at our corporate office in St. Louis and they don't necessarily have staff distributed out into the various states. So that's a little bit more challenging for us because of our organizational structure. But we're still looking at opportunities. IT is probably going to be one that I'm going to be hot on the trail of next year. We do have a centralized IT model, but we do have staff in each market that could serve as mentors. So there has been some interest expressed. I have to work on those leaders a little bit more, but I think there's good possibility for that one being our first one outside of patient care, other than facilities. So. All right. We have so many success stories. I pulled just a few. So Kate is working at St. Agnes Hospital in Fond du Lac as a phlebotomy apprentice. She has been absolutely phenomenal. Our lab leaders are so tickled with her. She has learned so much in her short time with us already. She just started last fall. So this is her first full year, but she's really loving it and feels like she's grown so much, not only in her technical skills, but just learning how to work with patients, those kind of interpersonal skills. And then the time management, she talks a lot about how, this is really helping advance her time management skills. She loves it so much that she's going to come back with us next year and advance into a lab tech apprentice role. So this is one of the reasons we did the lab tech role, so that someone could start in phlebotomy and then advance into a higher level lab role. And that's going to be a perfect fit for Kate. So we're really excited about that. She's having a great time. Just wonderful addition to the team. Another student who's also in the phlebotomy pathway at St. Agnes Hospital, also having a phenomenal time. We asked her for a quote about her mentor. She said that they've been incredibly supportive for her, that she's really enjoyed all the things that they've taught her. One of the things that I think is really important for mentors and apprentices right from the beginning is starting sort of approaching their training in a 3-step way. This is how I talk to mentors about it, that the first step is that the apprentice really is observing someone else complete the task. That's the first step, because these folks have never done this work before. Typically, many of them have never worked in a healthcare setting. So the first step is just observation. Then someone else observes them while they do the task. So really tight supervision, support, helping them understand all the mechanics. And then the third step is they perform it independently. And we really take that approach along all of those competencies for each of these pathways, that 3-step training model. That's been the key to our success. Our retention rate among our 60 apprentices that we hired in 2024 is 95%. That is the highest retention rate in the entire organization. I wish I could duplicate that elsewhere, but that's been absolutely phenomenal for us as an org. So 95% retention tells me that the training is working. They're having a good experience with our mentors. They're achieving their skills and their competencies. So as I mentioned earlier, such positive feedback from our leaders. Just they are blown away. One of our leaders in the Madison market has an apprentice in imaging, and she interviewed so well that the leaders at the team, she called me afterwards. She goes, "We felt kind of dumb, and we have graduate degrees." Like, she blew us out of the water. She had done so much research already in advance. She understood the discipline. She had a career path already outlined in writing. She knew what her next 16 steps were to get to that goal, and she is just absolutely determined to get there. So these students have been phenomenal, just phenomenal. And I will say a big thank you to our consortium partners, including CSEP 6, because I feel like, the vetting that's done in advance, the conversations that they're having with their high school coordinators have made all the difference in assuring that they're prepared, that they are serious about the apprenticeship, and they are really committed to learning. It's been a real game changer for us. So I'm going to stop sharing and open this up to questions.
Sandy, there was one question in the chat, I think, when we were looking at the pathways. Have you considered CHW apprenticeship, which I am unfamiliar with, but you probably know what that means.
Yeah, community health worker. Yeah. We haven't considered that because we don't have many job openings. So I like to, when I'm looking at pathways, I really want to include pathways where I think there's a very good chance that the apprentice would be able to step into a part-time or full-time role after graduation. In Wisconsin, we don't really have that opportunity. We don't have very many community health workers in Wisconsin. Not true in other states, but in Wisconsin, we really don't have a huge team in that space. And they get lots of applications on the rare occasion that they do have an opening. So it's something worth considering, but I always like to make sure that we have an opportunity for the apprentice to actually transition if they so choose. Good question.
Wonderful. We could take maybe one or two questions if anybody had some right now based on Sandy's presentation.
I think someone asked earlier about clinic roles. So we do place youth apprentices. I think we have an apprentice in nearly every clinic in Wisconsin. And we use two roles in our clinics. One is a medical office assistant, which is similar to a PAR, someone had mentioned earlier, and also medical assistant. Typically, in an ideal scenario, they would start as a medical office assistant in their first year and advance to a medical assistant in their second year, because by then they will have been exposed to a lot of those patient care skills just through observation working in the clinic. But we have had leaders hire them directly as medical assistants. It's just, it is a fair amount, it's a big training curve, as you can imagine, right at the beginning. So we're just really careful when we do hire into that medical assistant pathway that we take our time with apprentices and we give them the space they need to learn those skills up front before we give them too much. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, Sandy, thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate you sharing, the things that you've learned along the way and building such a large program so quickly. And I found it really interesting how you can then expand this across multiple states too, as I'm sure some of our organizations here are in a similar situation. I do encourage everyone to continue the conversation in the chat. I want to make sure we have enough time to hear kind of on the education side. So I'm going to hand it over to David Gordon, and he is the Career and Technical Education and YA Coordinator with CISA 7.
All right, thank you, Candace. Lindsay, I don't know if you want to pop up the presentation. There we go. First of all, thank you to Sandy and Phil for sharing their stories. I think it's incredibly powerful to hear how other organizations have navigated some of the common barriers that we hear from employers. And start with, we are one of the Youth Apprenticeship Consortia in the space. So if my counterparts would like to, chime in on what things look like specifically for them, you're certainly more than welcome to do so. But the nice thing about Youth Apprenticeship is that it's really overseen by the Department of Workforce Development. So the commonalities and the similar documentation will, play consistent throughout the entire program. Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. Our overview of the DWD program is really three essential components. There's a lot of different variables for the program, but it comes down to work hours, mentorship, and that related coursework piece. So Youth Apprenticeship, just as a little bit of background, is available to high school juniors and seniors. Students can opt to participate for 1 year, for 2 years, Some of the pathways offer, 2-year opportunities. Others are simply 1-year opportunities. If the student's participating for 1 year, they have to accumulate 450 work hours. That can be a combination of both summer employment and school year employment. The student's allowed to work as many hours as they would choose in the summer, but we're capped at counting 200 hours from technically summer employment, and then 250 are essentially worked during the school year. Another one of the essential components comes down to mentorship, and it's been mentioned, pretty extensively already, but that is such a critical component to helping young people be successful in these new environments. Showing them kind of what's anticipated. I heard Sandy had shared about allowing them to watch what certain things look like. Also about, the job shadow pieces, helping students understand the career pathways. The mentorship is such a critical component to youth apprenticeship. It's really what makes this a successful experience. And that's also shared with the school coordinators. So there's somebody on our end in the educational setting as well. I communicate regularly with Kate from Bellin. She's a great counterpart. If something's happening at work and the employers need some backup, feel free to reach out to your school coordinator. We have the capability to meet in person with those students to try to identify, if there are issues going on at work, what's happening and how to mitigate those. And then finally, related coursework. Phil and Chad had talked about the Bellin Academy, an amazing opportunity. There's a number of other opportunities with whether it be technical colleges or dual credit opportunities within school classes. Obviously, in the healthcare area, we talk a lot about the CNA course. Trying to help students gain access to that, is really helpful in them better understanding that patient care component. So those are the 3 fundamental pieces. Obviously, again, it's been mentioned, developing the pipeline, right? Finding out where your employees are going to come from. If you don't start to target the local high school graduates, I don't know how you're going to be able to fill all of the openings in your organizations. You really have to view it as developing that talent pipeline for your organization with local candidates interested in those career fields. The legal requirements, the questions about HIPAA, the nice thing about youth apprenticeship is that the student has a different legal classification. They're classified as student learners, which is typically less impactful in the health science area, but student learners do have increased flexibility than a traditional part-time employee that's, say, 16 or 17 years old. So students have the ability to work during the school day. They're not restricted in some of the occupational tasks that youth might otherwise be restricted. So those specifics should really be best kind of navigated in each role. So if you have questions on any of those things, your regional YA contact and also the Department of Workforce Development are happy to help answer any questions you may have there. So if we focus specifically on the health science pathways, and obviously we've heard, maintenance, IT, HR, there's plenty of other opportunities available for students to leverage youth apprenticeship within your healthcare organization. These are the health science pathways, and the Department of Workforce Development actually hides a lot of these pathways, and they're not always publicly available. But if you would like access to any of the pathway documents, we can certainly share that information. Any of the pathways go into great detail about what the experience should look like, the specific occupational competencies that the student's going to be evaluated on, and also the general employability skills, effective communication, reliability. Are the students demonstrating those preparedness skills that are essential in any field? And helping students, I loved what Sandy had shared about the sequence and what a career in health science can look like. We tell our employers it's essential for you to help students see their career trajectory and understand the opportunities that are available to them, during the youth apprenticeship placement, but also afterwards. Helping them see themselves with your organization is critical. We continue to lean on the Department of Workforce Development to consider new pathways. And one of the areas that we've been investigating is medical billing, coding, things like that. We recognize that the accounting pathways aren't always applicable, so finding ways for students to explore those careers has been something we've been navigating with the Department of Workforce Development. So this is from the CESA 7 perspective, kind of some of our growth, where we've seen success in building awareness, around what students can do at work. A lot of the organizations that come to us initially will say, well, we can't do this and we can't do that, and we're limited on these things. So the question becomes why? Why? And it's really not the state prohibiting, it's a lot of organizational pieces. So if we look, our CNA students alone for this year, we have 106 students. That's up from 79 a couple years ago. So helping organizations navigate, and again, my colleagues from CESA 6, CESA 8, CESA 5, we're all happy to help answer those program-specific questions and help your team understand how these students can be supportive members of their team. As Phil mentioned, these are employees of the organization. They're getting paid. They're accomplishing work tasks. They should not be adding to the work of your staff. They should really be supporting them and taking many of those responsibilities, from other members of your team. So that's just a kind of a recap of our growth year over year. Lindsay, if you want to go to the
David,
next.
can I just add a little something
Yeah,
here?
please do.
Statewide enrollment in healthcare went from 16% of total state engagement to 20% in this current school year, and we're still enrolling students. So when you look at the overall labor market data from a state perspective, healthcare is pretty much in line with where it should be from an engagement standpoint, but still has a lot of opportunity to grow. So the big three right now are manufacturing, healthcare, and construction. And it's important to note that while the healthcare piece of the pie is about 20% of total state enrollment, some of those students are also enrolling in the business pathways or the IT pathways or, other pathways as well, and still impacting the healthcare pathways.
Thank you. Yes, the healthcare participation rate is growing and rivaling that of any of the other areas, which is exciting to see at the state level. Fundamentally, from the employer, what are some of the key responsibilities? The on-the-job learning guide are the documents that outline each youth apprenticeship pathway. Those competencies have to be taught to the youth apprenticeship student. They have to be evaluated on those. There is a level of flexibility because the state recognizes that not every position is going to look identical. So in any one of the pathways, if there's a specific work task that just isn't appropriate for that placement, we can strike one and then substitute that with something that's appropriate for that student. So a little bit of flexibility there. The state mandates at least 2 progress reviews with the student. One of those could be the summative at the end, but we try to, capture some feedback, coach the student on how things are going at least 2 times throughout the year, provide a mentor. Again, that primary point of contact for the student, somebody that they can seek out, go to for information and support, ensure that the students are able to obtain at least those 450 hours, and then again, comply with any of the applicable wage and employment of minors laws. And again, we'd be happy to answer those on a case-by-case basis if you have those questions. From the education standpoint, I know each of the organizations have school-based coordinators, and our goal is to support our employers within the school setting. So a lot has been mentioned about the work that's done in vetting the candidates, preparing them for those careers, helping them conduct that career exploration so that they're coming to you intentional. These aren't students that have accidentally applied for a position. They've done a significant amount of work before they ever show up as a candidate, and that is our school-based coordinator side. I would love to encourage our employers, as you identify positions internally, Sandy had mentioned these students are applying, they're going through the same process. Feel free to post youth apprenticeship specific positions wherever you post openings for your organization. That helps emulate the real world experience. Students seek out the openings, they're able to complete your application and go through the process because again, this is an educational program. We want students to develop those skill sets. So we love it when that's an opportunity for students to navigate. Our consortium, and I know others also attend regularly with our HR partners. Again, if there's something coming up or you have questions about how the program works, there's an open dialogue, sharing what's working, what's not working. If you need someone to help brainstorm specific issues, we're happy to support on that end. Every organization and position has different facets to it, and we recognize that. So we're happy to help you understand what this program would look like for your organization specifically, coordinating the efforts with our academic and career planning to really start building awareness of healthcare careers early on. We have students in middle school participating in career exploration events, and that builds all the way up until that student's junior year. Candace had mentioned this is really the capstone, right? So these students have had exposure, they've had experience, they understand some of the opportunities, and again, they're seeking these positions out after having done a fair amount of research in advance. We leverage a healthcare advisory committee. I know all of the YA consortia have steering committees. We leverage a healthcare specific where we bring in our regional healthcare partners. And initially when we did this, we're like, how is this going to work when we bring in HR representatives from all of the different organizations and essentially they're all competing, for the same workforce. But the conversation that we were able to have around shared barriers, improving processes for everyone was really fruitful. So bringing people together from your region, different healthcare providers, assisted living facilities, whatever it may be, to streamline that process so that everyone can benefit was really key in our growth. And I know it has been for others. I don't know if, Tanya or Brooke want to share anything about, your outreach or how you've supported employers in building, your local programs.
Brooke, you
I'll
can go
just jump
first.
on.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Tanya, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Brooke.
I'll just jump on. I support the CISA 8 districts. We have about 17 districts that participate in our Northwoods Youth Apprenticeship Consortium. And our healthcare participation is probably ranks right around like 4th or 5th in the line of different career pathway programs that are offered through Youth Apprenticeship. So we certainly have room to grow with healthcare. We are seeing our students in similar type roles that David showcased from his CISA 7 data, really in that CNA, that resident aid, dietary aid. Those are pretty easy placements for students, but we definitely see students' interests being a little bit more broad than that. So it's great to hear our healthcare partners being open to different opportunities to explore. So I'm very grateful to be a part of this discussion. I know some of our CISA 8 employers are on, so hopefully they're able to learn a little bit of information from the success of others.
Yeah, great. And I echo what has been said on the call already. I think we're seeing students finding interest in healthcare, and the academic and career planning process is expanding their knowledge about what health careers look like outside of those traditional patient serving roles. So any way that we can open up more opportunities for kids to be exposed to other roles within healthcare facilities, it seems like that's where the interest is. We personally in our region had close to 800 applications for students seeking opportunities in healthcare. And so the interest is high. The opportunities are not always in alignment with that. So anything that we can do either from a region or through trade journals or associations, I think any of us on the call would be willing to come and speak to those organizations and share how this can be scaled and grown within your facilities.
And I think this is a really good opportunity to introduce our last presenter here. We are not going to have time for our breakout groups because we've had such great dialogue. But for our employers to know, there is extra help when you're looking at integrating students. How does that look? So, Joanne, you want to talk a little bit about Project Search and what you do to help students get integrated? Oh, Joanne, are you on? I believe you're here, right? Oh,
Yeah, we
we're not
can't hear
hearing
you,
you.
Joanne.
No. Oh,
We go. It helps
there.
turn on my microphone. Um, and my video blanks out once in a while, so if it does that, I'll try to catch it and try to come back and actually have a face here. So Project Search is a transition program for young adults who are in their last year of high school. And our young people with disabilities can go to high school until they're 21. So most of the time, our interns, we call them, are between the ages of 19 and 21. They can start at age 18, but the parents in the school would have to agree that this would be their last year of high school. Because once they leave Project Search, they will get a job. So the goal of the program is for our adults with disabilities to gain employment in an integrated setting and get competitive pay. We want them to be able to hold a job and get paid what anybody else would get paid. In Green Bay, our Project Search is housed at St. Vincent Hospital, and we work together with St. Vincent and Bellin hospitals. And our interns have internships between both hospitals. The outcome isn't necessarily for them to get a job in the healthcare industry, but project searches often take place in places like hospitals because there are so many different types of employment that they can try within a hospital. So if we have an intern who's interested in food service, they could have an internship in the hospital cafeteria. If they're interested in, well, we've had a couple interns who had internships in the pharmacy and then became pharmacy technicians after they left Project Search. So they can end up getting a position in the healthcare field if it is appropriate for them and if they're capable of it, but that isn't necessarily the outcome of the program. Our interns start at the beginning of the school year. They come to St. Vincent. They don't go back to their school. They go through 3 10-week internships in 3 different areas. So they gain some opportunities in, we'd like them to have as many varied experiences as they can so that they can make a better choice as to what career they want once they leave Project Search. Project Search consists of, it's many agencies that come together to put it on. We do work with the Department of Workforce Development. We have a DVR counselor who is dedicated to our program. I am a special education teacher hired by CISA 8, and my other on-site colleague is a career specialist hired by Aspiro. And Aspiro also provides the manager of our program as well. We work with both hospitals, and I'm forgetting somebody, but I'm not going to worry about that too much yet. I mentioned the 3 10-week internships. Oh, and when our interns are done in May, they work with our career specialist to search for employment. She will assist them to interview if they need that. And then once they obtain a job in the community, our career specialist goes out and does skills training with them on the job for as long as they need. So there are some interns that might get a job when they leave Project Search, and they might only need assistance for a few months, and then they don't need it anymore. There are others that need someone to check in with them weekly for years. It depends upon the disability and in what they require. I think I'd like to leave this open to questions, if anybody has anything specific.
I have a question.
Please go
You
ahead.
you mentioned the supports available once they complete the program and they're placed. So sort of like a job coach,
Yes.
type model, right?
Yep.
What about during the internship? Is that support also available then?
Yes. So during the internship, we cap our program at 8. We have 8 interns and 2 staff members. I spend the first hour of the day teaching. So we have a class for an hour and on different things like a lot of social skills, teamwork, communication, preparation for employment, things like that. And then our interns go out into their departments, which is where they are right now. They work in a department from 9 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. And while they're doing that, then my colleague and I both become skills trainers, and we go around to each intern and try to visit with them at least 2 times a day to see how they're doing and if they need help with anything. They are in the middle of their second internship, and they're all pretty well independent at this point, but we do get time to time to assist with whatever we need. A lot of times it's teaching new tasks. We also have a mentor who's in the department already, an employee of the department who is there to answer questions for that intern when we're not available. So my colleague and I do the heavy lifting when it comes to training and things. But then there is somebody in the department as well to assist the intern on a day-to-day basis.
Very good. Well, and I see we're up at 101 right now. And some of us have had to log off. I just wanted to leave this space open if anybody had just any, you can put it in the chat, or if anybody wants to say any takeaways from this. I know personally, there's a couple things I'm taking away for our employers. First of all, we heard it from everyone. You need to have the HR and the C-suite support, right? If the people at the top aren't supporting it, it's not going to happen. That these students are employees. That's how we get around HIPAA. I always love asking Phil that question because the answer is yes. These students are employees, and I want all of our youth apprentices to be looked at that way. And for our employers, you are having students that are vetted through schools, through counselors, through our youth apprenticeship. You are going to get some really great students, and you're going to find students of many different abilities, and that's why we wanted to make sure that we had that all here for you. And lastly, I think the piece that I'm seeing here, especially as you look at the employers that are using it, they're getting a lot of really good employees. So thank you to Bellin and SSM. You are getting, what was that, collectively almost 200 in some of our students. So a little bit of competition, and make sure you reach out. I will be sending this out to all of the registrants, so they will have all of this information. And I'll end it with that. I will stick around for any questions. I know some of our CISA friends can stick around. Some people have to leave, but we'll leave this space open for any kind of questions or anything else that people want to stick around.